Welcome to the Docs with Disabilities Access in Medicine module. How to apply for accommodations on the MCAT. In this module, you will learn how to access the MCAT accommodation application through the AAMC website, determine the type of application you will need to complete, the necessary steps to complete and upload the MCAT accommodation application, the required documentation to accompany your application, and the do's and don'ts for a personal statement. The AAMC has information about timelines and dates for testing. Before you pick a date or establish your study timeline, educate yourself about the time it takes to complete the request for accommodation. For students in Canada, make sure you are aware of the Canada-only testing dates. There are 5 types of applications. If you are applying for accommodations on the MCAT for the first time, you will need to complete the initial application. Initial accommodation requests may take up to 60 days to review. A reconsideration request is needed when you were denied after the initial application. You must provide new and substantial information for reconsideration eligibility, such as updated testing, a letter from your treating physician, or prior testing accommodations from your undergraduate program, SAT or ACT, etc. An appeal request is a one-time request to have your application re-reviewed without providing new or substantially different documentation. The decision made after the appeal is final, so it's important to carefully choose between submitting a reconsideration or an appeal. An extension request is for extending the approval of previously approved accommodations. To request additional accommodations, you must use the reconsideration process. If your application is incomplete, it lacks enough information for a full review, but this is not a denial. You cannot submit a new application until you complete the process with the current one. Refer to your incomplete determination letter for guidance on the required documentation. Once you have received a AAMC ID number, you will have access to the dashboard. This is where you will be able to track your application progress. Keep in mind that the review process can take up to 60 days, and if an appeal is needed, it adds 30 more days. Accommodations must be approved at least 15 days prior to the test date. This means when applying for accommodations for the MCAT, you should allow yourself at least 6 months lead time. There are 4 main sections to the application: history of accommodations, managing your condition, limitations caused by your condition, and why accommodations are necessary, and lastly, the documentation section. The history of accommodations is where you will detail past accommodations in school/standardized tests. Managing your condition is to explain daily strategies, devices, or medications used to manage your condition. Limitations for the MCAT discusses why these methods are insufficient and why accommodations are necessary. And the documentation section outlines how and when your condition has been documented by medical professionals or on evaluations. Once you have completed all sections, select and justify the accommodations you need within the 1,500-word limit, such as extended time or break time, and provide clear reasoning based on the functional limitations rather than emotional appeals. The required documentation is the key to securing accommodations for the MCAT. To reduce the chance of needing to go through the reconsideration process, students should start to gather the documentation well in advance of the application due date. Transcripts from college should be included, as well as verification of prior accommodations from undergraduate program or prior institutions. Additional information that shows the history of receiving accommodations for timed testing or that substantiate your disability are important. IEPs or 504 plans are great to demonstrate history of the need for accommodations. Report cards with comments about test taking or inattentiveness may also strengthen your case. A current comprehensive evaluation is a critical part of your MCAT accommodation application. It is a detailed report written by a qualified professional, such as a physician, psychiatrist, or psychologist, who is familiar with your disability. The AAMC offers guidance on which professionals are best suited to evaluate your condition for accommodations. Evaluations should describe your diagnosis, medical details, functional limitations related to the MCAT test, and specific accommodation requests. For example, if requesting additional breaks due to a physical condition, the evaluator should explain how many breaks are needed, their purpose, and how they will help you perform better. In-depth, well-prepared evaluations and documentation of need are key to getting your accommodation request approved. Be sure to select the right professionals and share AAMC's What Evaluators Need to Know guide with them to ensure effective evaluations. The MCAT accommodations personal statement is an important part of your application, allowing you to explain why you need specific accommodations and how they will help you perform at your best. In your statement, include details about your diagnosis or condition, how it affects your ability to take standardized exams, and the accommodations you're requesting. The AAMC prompt invites the applicant to answer this question. What are your current functional limitations, history of accommodations, and what do you feel is necessary to level the playing field on the MCAT exam? While there is no set word count, aim to be clear and concise. When writing your personal statement, the goal is to help the reviewer understand your functional limitations and why the requested accommodations are necessary. Start by connecting your diagnosis or condition to the specific barriers you experience during testing. A diagnosis alone does not explain the need for an accommodation. Describe what actually happens when you test under standard conditions and use concrete examples whenever possible. This is also where your personal experience matters. Your documentation provides the clinical evidence. Your statement provides context about how the condition affects you. Focus on the functional limitations that are relevant to the exam and explain how the requested accommodations address those barriers. One important point: this is not the time to minimize your disability by emphasizing how well you have compensated or how successful you have been despite it. Those successes may be real, but they can unintentionally obscure the effort, strategies, or supports required to achieve them. Be specific and authentic about your experience. Concrete examples can help the reviewer understand the barriers you encounter under standard testing conditions and how the requested accommodations address those barriers. Ultimately, you want the reviewer to be able to follow a clear line. This is the functional limitation. This is how it affects me under standard testing conditions, and this is how the requested accommodation provides access. Review your application for completeness before submission. Do you have your prior documentation? Is your personal statement complete? Have you picked the correct application type? If you have questions, you can contact Accommodations at AAMC.org. When your application is complete, schedule your test date. Don't be discouraged. The landscape of acceptance into medical school is changing. With the increase in the number of medical students with disabilities self-disclosing, there is also an increase in medical schools providing a more inclusive environment, thanks in part to students advocating for their needs and more specialized disability professionals. Students are also making their voices heard and building communities to support one another. There are several student and physician-led groups where you can connect with others who share similar experiences, ask questions, find resources, and get involved in advocacy. These include Medical Students with Disability and Chronic Illness, or MSDCI, the Disability Advocacy Coalition in Medicine, or DAC, and the Canadian Association of Physicians with Disabilities, or CAPD. These communities are a great reminder that you are not navigating medical education alone, and there is a growing community of disabled learners and physicians to connect with along the way. The best way to continue to change the landscape of medical education for persons with disabilities is to use your voice and lead by example. Representation truly makes a difference. Medical students who receive training in and training faculty with disabilities report a heightened awareness of disability issues and a more comprehensive understanding of both biomedical and social models of disability. Docs with Disabilities Initiative is here to support your journey. This is why medical education needs you. Here you will find links to all information referenced in the module. This video is a product of the Docs with Disabilities Initiative's Access in Medicine program in partnership with the University of Michigan Center for Disability Health and Wellness. The contents of this video were developed under a grant from the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research. NIDLR Grant Number 90RTHF0005. NIDLR is a center within the Administration for Community Living, Department of Health and Human Services. The contents of this video do not necessarily represent the policy of NIDLR, Administration for Community Living, or Health and Human Services, and you should not assume endorsement by the federal government. This video is a product of the Docs with Disabilities Initiative and their Access in Medicine program. For additional resources and information about the Docs with Disabilities Initiative, please visit the Docs with Disabilities Initiative website or follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn.